Hello everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Katana Jr. mid-power model rocket by Apogee Components. This is a half-scale version of their high-power rocket of the same name, and like the high-power rocket, this one can be flown as a dual deployment rocket. And so you can fly it up high and then just have a drogue chute come out, and then as it reaches a lower altitude, the main chute pops out for a nice safe landing. It includes the avionics bay as well as 2 parachutes and the necessary payload bays and everything to put all that together. The only thing you need for dual deployment is an actual altimeter and the wiring for that. Now this can also be flown as a typical motor ejection model rocket as well. Okay, so if you don't want to put the investment of an altimeter and the other things that you need for dual deployment in quite yet, you can just fly this like any other model rocket. Alright, so let's go ahead and open this up and make sure that we've got everything. This is a pretty packed kit here. There's a lot of stuff inside. So the first thing we want to do is find the instructions here. Alright, and there's often stuff put in it, so we've got all our decals there. But let's find what we've got here. Alright, so I'm just going to start taking things out. A lot of times with these Apogee kits, they give you kind of a number here and not a whole lot of description. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start here. We've got fin stock. Feels like it's probably basswood. Alright, here's the part, at least, of the eBay kit. Alright, we've got 2 body tubes here, as well as a coupler, and this coupler you can see is pre-drilled, and this is for the eBay itself. Okay, this is the other part of the eBay kit. Alright, we've got a nose cone, 29mm motor mount tube. Okay, that looks like our main parachute there. And then this would be our drogue chute. Shock cord again. Let's see here, we should have 2 shock cords. And there's the second one. Okay, some centering rings. Alright, launch lug for 1/4" rod. And then it looks like we've also got, there's a bunch of little small parts that are just in the bottom of this bag here. But make sure you check that so you don't lose any here. Okay, we've got a couple of T-nuts or weld nuts here, and those should be part of the eBay kit. We've got some reusable plastic rivets. That also is for the eBay. 2 wing screws there for the eBay. And then 2 nylon screws. Those are going to be for attaching your altimeter to the avionics bay as well. And I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. Alright, so electronics bay or avionics bay, eBay, A-bay, it's all the same thing. Alright, and then we've got a switch here, and this will be the main power switch for the eBay as well. And so this would eventually tie into the altimeter, if you put one in here, to control it. Alright, let's run through here. It looks like we've got everything. I'm not seeing anything that we're missing. Alright, now again, the decals here were inside the instruction sheet. And it also comes with a little stand kit here, so that you can prop this up nicely when it's displayed on your shelf or something. Alright, and it looks like we've got everything we need. So I'm going to clear most of this away and then we will get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just sand the faces of all of the wood parts here. Now on the fins, in the instructions, it says to assemble these before you sand them. But I'm not trying to sand the edges or anything. I just want to sand the faces here. And mainly just to smooth things out and get rid of some of the scorch marks from the laser cutter here. So I've got some 150 grit sandpaper on a sanding block. And I'm just going to go through and just sand the faces of all of these. Now on some of these, the little pieces that filled the holes here falling out, that's fine. You do want to make sure you don't lose these. So the inner piece can fall out, and that's not a big deal, you don't need it. But these little donut shapes here are going to be spacers for the circuit board of an altimeter, and you do want to hang on to those. Our next step is to remove the fins from the stock here. And most of these may just fall out. They may just be held onto by a little nub here. So we can just cut through that as needed. Okay, and so each fin actually consists of 3 components. Okay, so there will be 3 big sheets here and then 3 of these little connectors. And according to the instructions, they can only be assembled in one way. So hopefully it's a little bit idiot-proof here. Because at some point, we all do things that are a little idiotic. Yeah, most of these are coming out really easily. Alright, so if we come back to our instructions here. Alright, so if we take the large piece there, and then that will connect like so. This is kind of like building a puzzle. Like that. And then one of these little keystone pieces there. Alright. So you'll want to dry fit all of these to begin with and make sure there's not a problem with them. If they're not going together easily, just take a small file and file away a little bit at a time whatever's causing the blockage. Now once you've got them all done, and I'm going to go ahead and just work on one here. We're going to glue these together, and I recommend using some wax paper underneath them. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this guy back loose. Alright, we're going to glue this with wood glue. You could use white glue, but I really recommend the wood glue. It's going to be stronger and also usually dries faster. Oh, okay, I got a little broken spot there. Alright, we can fix that though. Alright, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue here on the edges. Oop, not that much. Okay, you don't want a big glob of glue, you want a thin film here. press that in. And before that dries, I'll also put a little bit of glue here. So the idea is to kind of do this all at once. Alright, then I'm going to take the little broken piece there and we'll just put some glue around it. Alright, we'll fit that in there. And just for a little added measure, I'm going to put a thin film of glue over those joints. But we don't want it down inside here. So just kind of wipe that out if we need to. Same thing here. Let's turn those over. Alright, now I'm going to transfer this over to a flatter surface because my work surface here is a little bit bumpy. You can just let this dry. If you want, you can take and fold over the wax paper there and put something heavy on top of it, like a book or a toolbox or something. Alright, I'm going to do the other two fins in the same manner, hopefully without breaking it this time, and we'll come back when it's done. While the fins are drying, I'm going to move on to the centering rings here. And on one of these, we need to file a notch on the inside portion here. And this will become a passageway for the shock cord to mount to. And then we can just take one of the shock cords here and just use it as a sizing guide. So that should pass through there without bulging out here. So this is fine. Alright, so next we need to make two marks on our engine mount tube, or motor mount tube here. Okay, so we need 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters from each end. Just mark that there. And over here. Now, something to keep in mind is that this kit does not come with any type of motor retention. They're just going to use a masking tape method, which does work. It's just not very elegant. Okay. Now on these rings here, the one with the notch will be the forward ring. Alright, so it's going to go there. The one without the notch will be the aft ring. and it will go up to the other mark there. Now if you do want to add motor retention to this, you'll have to buy that separately. Okay, so this is a screw-on retainer made by Estes, and I'm just going to dry fit this and make sure there's enough room there. Okay, so if I have my aft ring at that 1/2 inch mark right there, and this fits fine with just a little gap down there. Okay, so that's all well and good. Alright, now I'm going to take one of the shock cords here, and these should both be the same size. I'm going to go back to the parts list and make sure of that. Yep. Okay, so they're both 8-foot lengths here. Now, what happens a lot with Kevlar line is once it's been cut, it tends to fray very easily because the individual fibers tend to be very smooth and slippery against each other. So what I'm going to do here is just take some regular viscosity super glue. I'm just going to put that overlapping the area where it's fraying and also the area where it's still in good condition there. I'm going to do that to both ends. Alright, you just let that soak in for just a few seconds. It doesn't take long. And then you can take a tissue or a paper towel and then just wipe those off. Alright, you don't need any accelerators or things like that. It pretty much dries very quickly once it's wiped there. Okay, and then take your hobby knife and just cut off the frayed part, leaving at least a little bit of the glue on the good side there. Okay, do that for both ends. Alright, and this will just make it a whole lot easier to work with. Alright, so now we're going to take our aft centering ring here and glue it into place. Alright, so I'm just going to put a ring of glue just inside my mark there so that when I put the ring on, it will slide into that. Alright, again. And just bring that up. Alright, try and get that as level and perpendicular as we can. Alright, and then you can smooth the excess glue into a fillet. That moved a little bit, that's okay. We'll just move that back into place. And I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes before we go on to the rest of the motor mount. The glue has dried enough to handle, although it's not completely dry yet. And so now what we're going to do is pull that back off, and I'm going to tie a knot into the shock cord here around the motor tube. Okay, and then we're going to take the whole shock cord, pass that through the forward centering ring here. Alright, and then make sure that the cord is in that notch. Alright, and then I'm going to back this down. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is just make a ring like we did before. And then we'll push the ring into the glue here. Alright, we'll push that forward till we get to our mark. And like before, I'm going to go ahead and spread this around into sort of a fillet. Now, at this point, we're going to bring the shock cord up against the ring here. And now we're going to run a bead of glue all the way around this and embed the shock cord in the glue. Okay, so you can readjust that here, and now I'm just going to make a fillet out of the glue. Okay, you can pull that up there. Alright, try and get that centering ring as perpendicular as possible to the tube. And now once more we're going to let all that glue dry. While the motor mount glue is drying, we can cut out the fin marking guide here. I just want to make sure that we don't cut into anything important. If you don't want to cut up your instructions, then go ahead and make a photocopy of this. And now we're going to take the longer of the two body tubes, and we're going to wrap this around one end, which will become the aft end. Okay, so just line up those tick marks there and put a little piece of masking tape on it. And I'm going to extend the masking tape onto the tube here so that my guide doesn't rotate while we're marking things. Alright, and then just mark a little tick mark here on either side. Alright, now for this one that says launch lug, I'm just going to put a little LL next to it so I know it's not a fin. To extend the lines up the body tube, you can use a piece of angled metal or a door frame, or I'm going to use this tube marking guide that Estes makes, and it's basically just a whole bunch of straight lines at different levels. And the instructions want us to make these lines at least 6 inches up from the aft end. Alright, so about 1/3 of the way up the tube. If you want to make them longer, that's fine. Now for my launch lug here, I'm going to extend it all the way up. Because if nothing else, it helps me get the launch lug on straight. Alright, and then for our fin lines here, we'll just go up about 1/3 of the way. Okay. Now when we get to putting the fins on, I also highly recommend using a fin alignment guide. Apogee makes a nice set of them, or if you just want to get one for this, this is a BT70 body tube. Alright, and now we need a mark. Okay, so the launch lug is going to go 2.5 inches from the forward end, so up here on my launch lug line. And just mark that. My ruler will quit moving. right there. The glue on my fins has dried, and now we are supposed to use some wood filler to fill in any gaps here, and then we'll sand these. Now the instructions do not call for us to put any type of airfoil on here, but you could definitely round the leading edge here, and if you really wanted to, you could round or taper the trailing edge. I do know that at Apogee, for their display models at least, they often don't do any type of airfoiling because they say it makes it easier to take their picture. I'm going to go ahead and put a rounded edge on mine. But first I will fill in the areas around those seams with some wood filler here. Right. Now that's a new one. Almost looks like my wood filler's gone moldy. Right. Let's see here. Well, it's still gooey though, we'll go with that. So I'm just going to use my finger here, and we'll just fill in these areas. Try not to get it down in this gap in the fins. That's supposed to be there, and it's going to be a pain to clean stuff out of it. I do still have my wax paper from the gluing that we did, and I'm going to use it again here once we have all of the filler applied, so that we can do both sides at the same time, and then we'll allow that to be pressed and flattened once more. Alright, so I'm going to let those dry. It'll probably take about half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, and then we'll come back and sand them. Both the forward and aft rings have their glue dry, or mostly dry. There's still a little whiteness there. I am going to put a fillet here on the forward edge of the aft ring, since that one has not been done yet. This is relatively straightforward. Just going to run a bead of glue around here. And just smooth that in. But since we already have glue on this will not affect the structure at all. And just the excess here I'll put on the other side. Alright, and now I'm going to take the shock cord here, and I'm going to run it down through the motor mount and out the aft end, like this, in preparation for mounting that into the body tube. Alright, so here we've got our body tube once more, and I'm just going to write on the inside here that the aft end is indeed aft, so we don't get this turned around accidentally. And we need to put some glue up inside here, and according to the instructions that should be 6 1/4 inches. Another way to do that is to simply take an applicator here and measure from the inside of the ring backward. Alright, now mine doesn't quite reach. I think it'll be okay anyway. The idea here is to put a ring of glue up inside there, and then the forward ring will pass through that and form its own fillet. So we're going to want a fairly heavy bead of glue in here. And so I'm just going to reach up as far as I can to do that, because that should be about where we need that glue, is how far I can reach with this particular applicator. Now if you don't have an applicator, you can use a dowel or a scrap piece of balsa or something similar. Alright, but I'm going to check up inside there. It looks like I've got a good ring of glue. I don't want to just shove this in at once. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in partially, like this. Alright. And actually, before I put glue up in there, I should have done a dry fit. This is just a little bit tight. So I'm going to very quickly just give it a little bit of sanding here. That's better. Alright, and now I'm also going to put a ring of glue about 1/4 of an inch here inside the aft end, and that will be for the aft centering ring. Okay, because theoretically this can take up to an H-class engine, and we want this really well braced in there. Okay, so I just felt that forward ring hit the glue. Alright, and we want this part flush. Alright, so my body tube and my engine mount should be flush there, and it is. Alright, and then we're going to, I don't know if I can get this under the camera, we want to look down inside and make sure that the glue has actually formed a fillet there. I'm going to try this with an external flashlight. See if we can get to look down in. There we go. Okay, and so it's got a heavier fillet on one side, but looks like it didn't quite get all the way around. And so the instructions want us to do that. So I'm going to get a longer dowel here. Alright, so now I'm just going to take my dowel, dip it in my glue here. Don't want it too drippy, but we do want it to flow a bit. Alright, now, you can't see this, but I'm smoothing that glue around in there so that it will form a fillet by means of gravity. Alright, it's kind of sloppy looking, but it worked. Okay, back on the aft end, we will also make a fillet here. For this I'll just use the applicator. Okay, just be careful that you don't glue the shock cord into the motor mount there. Alright, and then a little bit of excess glue there. I'm just going to wipe that around the inside of the body tube just to give it a little bit of protection from exhaust gases from the motor. Okay, and then we're going to let all of that dry for a good half hour or more. Now while we're waiting for the glue on the motor mount to dry, we can come back to our fins here and remove some of this excess filler. So anything that got in here, you just kind of shave off or just knock off. Sometimes it'll just fall off of there. So we can start with that. Now this might not be quite dry yet. We'll see. Alright, but I'm going to start by sanding with some 150 grit sandpaper here, and then I'm going to work my way up to 320 grit. Now you notice it doesn't take much to remove that wood filler there. Okay, you want to be careful you won't sand down too far that we're actually getting through the wood filler and back into the wood. Alright, and then for the areas inside there, if you need to do more, you can either get a little piece of sandpaper in there, or a little file, or even an emery board. Here, but I think in most cases we can just kind of cut this away, or scrape it away there. Alright, and then on the edge here, this is the one I broke. So this one especially, it's got a little bit of a catch there, and so I'm just going to take the root edge and run it across my sandpaper a couple of times. Yeah, and that does fine. Okay, and now from here, I'm going to go to some 220 grit. I'm just going to hit the edges lightly here. Okay, mostly just to remove any little nubbins or bits of wood filler that got on there. Alright, and then as I said, I'm going to round the leading edge here, and I'll leave the rest of them squared off. So I'm coming back to 150 grit. You could even go back to 100 grit if you wanted a little bit faster, since this is harder wood than balsa. Alright, and just come back, check the cross section. You can use this scorch mark here as kind of an indication of how far we've got toward the middle there. You can do this freehand like I was doing there. You can also put this on a block and just rotate your wrist to get the curvature. Now do be careful when you're doing this that you don't put too much pressure on these joints or you could break the wood. I'm feeling it flex a little bit as we do this. Alright, now that I've got the leading edge fully shaped here, I'm going to give a final surface sanding with 320 grit sandpaper. And that's looking pretty good. Check and make sure that you don't need to do any touch-ups anywhere, things like this. I think this is looking pretty darn good there. Need to clean out a little bit of wood filler there. Okay, I'm going to do this with the same type of thing with the other two fins off camera, and then we'll come back. I'm continuing to work on the other fins off camera, but I just had the brilliant idea that I could have one fin gluing while I'm doing the next fin shaping and sanding. So what I'm going to do here first of all is just take a little bit of sandpaper here and use the fin as a guide. Okay, and I'm just going to scratch the surface here. It just takes a couple of strokes here. I'm using 150 grit sandpaper. You can use almost anything. I'm going to do the same thing for the launch lug here. Actually, I'll come back to the launch lug when I'm ready to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do the other fins. Okay, got that one and this one here. Alright, now I'm going to take my wood glue and I'm going to run a uniform but not very thick bead of glue along here. And if you get it too thick, all it does is make it take longer to dry. Alright, and then the edge of the fin should be flush with the edge of the body tube there. Alright, now I'm going to put that on and I'm taking it off again here. And I'm going to let this dry and get tacky for about 30 to 60 seconds. Alright, some time has passed and the glue has become stickier. And now I'm just going to put this right back on and into that line of glue. And now that it's had time to get some tackiness to it, I can actually let go of the fin without it falling over. Okay, and we need to make sure that it's in line with the tube and perpendicular to the tube there. And if you're going to use a fin alignment guide, like this one that Apogee makes, this is the time to put it on. I'm going to let that fin dry for about 15 minutes or so, and in the meantime I'll be working on the other two fins, getting them sanded and shaped, and then I'll do the same thing with them, but I'll do that all off camera. The glue on my fins has dried. Now I've noticed here we've got a little bit of lifting on the forward edge here and some on the aft edge here, and this is likely due to the two pieces of the fins not quite lining up or just warping a little bit. So if you're watching this before you build this, I would say make sure you make sure that those edges are very flat and squared off. If you've reached this point, you can either break the fins off and try again, which I have no intention of doing, or you can just reinforce these with good fillets. Now we'll do fillets here in a little bit. Our next task is to add the launch lug. The forward end of the launch lug is going to go at the mark we made earlier. So I'm just going to line this up and make another mark at the aft end of the launch lug, so that I know where to sand. So just like I did with the fins, I'm just going to make a couple of strokes here to roughen up that area. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the launch lug itself. Alright, once again use some wood glue to attach this. Okay, and then we're just going to put this right on here. Now you don't need to do this the way we did the fins and pull it off to let it get tacky. Okay, but we do want to make sure everything is aligned, so the launch lug should be aligned with the body tube and the line that we drew, and that looks pretty good. So once again here we'll let this dry, and when we come back we'll put the fillets on everything. The fins and the launch lug are now dry enough that we can put on the fillets. And I like to do my fillets on facing fins. There we go. So just run a bead of glue along the base of each fin there. Alright, it's a good idea to have paper towels or a rag handy to wipe your fingers on, because now we're just going to smooth this in. Now, especially in these areas where the fin lifted a little bit, that may take a little bit more glue. And you may have to do this in a couple of layers. So anytime that you want thicker fillets, regardless of the reason, it's better to do them in layers rather than trying to make a big thick fillet all at once. And the reason for that is that they tend to run, and they also tend to form bubbles if you get a lot of stuff in there. Alright, I'm just going to continue around the rocket here. Okay, and then the same thing for the launch lug. And I found that launch lugs almost always develop bubbles, and it's just because there's a deeper area to fill there. So try and start out as thin as you can to help minimize those bubbles. Alright, now if you lay this down horizontally, everything should dry without running to one end or the other. And then once it's dry, we can come back and take a look at it and decide whether or not we need more fillet material. Now here I am going to end this part of the video at this point, and if I need to build up the fillets, I'll do that off camera.